fixing a belief in your mind, but not a way of ensuring truth. The second is the method of authority. The problem there is that there are conflicting authorities. So how do you judge between conflicting authorities and what they say? The third is the method of tradition. Whose tradition? Whose convention? And of course that's very much like the method of authority. So what he advocates is scientific method. Scientific method. Not some a priori tradition that affirms something prior to any observation, but rather the method of confirmation of a hypothesis, where there is appeal to public evidence within the community of observers, the scientific community, a process that is self-corrective. I should have said that the method of tradition is an appeal to what various traditions find intuitive. His point being that intuitions vary from tradition to tradition. So this is what he's advocating. Now, why not the old concerns for rational proof? Why not the foundationalist approach of finding first principles and then deducing from that? And that really gets to the nub of the matter, because what Peirce is doing, basically, is critiquing the Cartesian tradition. And here I have a print-off that will get that before you. Oh, you got one. Okay, everybody got one? Okay, let me have any spares afterwards, if you would. You notice that this is taken from his collected papers, which is what everybody goes to in trying to get at Peirce. Most of it was essays. Most of his writings were essays. Notice that he says at the beginning that Descartes, the father of modern philosophy, distinguishes it from scholasticism as follows. It teaches that philosophy must begin with universal doubt, whereas scholasticism never questioned fundamentals. The ultimate test of certainty is found in the individual consciousness. Stove-heated room, alone. Intuitive test for truth is always private. Scholasticism had rested on the testimony of the sages in the Catholic Church. Third, the multiform argument of the Middle Ages, many reasons and arguments for a certain position. Remember Aquinas? How many arguments he'll give for something? The multiform argumentation of the Middle Ages is replaced by a single thread of inference depending often on inconspicuous premises. Think of Descartes' Meditations and how one thing follows another all the way through to the end. Number 4, scholasticism had its mysteries of faith, but undertook to explain all created things. while there are many facts which Cartesianism not only does not explain, but renders absolutely inexplicable, except to say, God makes it so. Now, in some or all of these respects, most modern philosophers have been Cartesians. And I think you can see how that is essentially true up to Kant, at least. And his response follows. On point one, we cannot begin with complete doubt. Why not? Well, we always miss something that we haven't thought to doubt because we weren't aware of our own assumptions, not always aware of your own beliefs. Yeah, beliefs. You may not be aware of your own beliefs. That is to say, you say, oh, yeah, I guess I do believe that, when somebody points it out to you, because you're taking it for granted. So we cannot begin with complete doubt. In practical terms, it's not possible. Second, the same formalism appears in the Cartesian criterion, which amounts to this: whatever I'm clearly convinced of is true. Well, obviously, the quest becomes moot, because if everybody was convinced, then there would be no further question. And there's a great deal of difference between being convinced and something being true. I had a friend who used to say, when somebody said to him, well, that's perfectly self-evident, my friend would say, well, it may be to you, it isn't to me. You know, and by implication, even if it were to me and everybody else, so what? His point is that clarity and distinctness are criteria of meaningfulness rather than truth. To say it's clear and distinct means, oh, I see what you mean, rather than necessarily it's true. Though sometimes truth rides piggyback on meaning. Number three, philosophy ought to imitate the successful sciences in its methods and to trust the multitude and variety of those arguments rather than the conclusiveness of any one. That's like saying Descartes put too much stock in mathematical method, which of course in continental science in his day was the method of continental science, dominantly optics and mechanics. But in later experimental science, mathematics is not the method. It's just one. Experimental method is far more significant. And then number four, every unidealistic philosophy supposes some absolutely inexplicable, unanalyzable ultimate. In short, something resulting from mediation itself, not susceptible of mediation. Now, that anything is thus inexplicable can only be known by reasoning from signs. Well, the only justification of an inference from signs is that conclusion explains the fact. To suppose the fact inexplicable is not to explain it. And hence the supposition is never allowed. And he repeats some things written in opposition to Cartesianism, saying we have no power of introspection, we have no power of intuition, we have no power of thinking without signs, and so we have no conception of what's absolutely incognizable. That is to say, if you can't think without signs and you don't have any signs for what's not thinkable, then you can't think of the unthinkable. I suspect that last sentence has reference to a British philosopher around the same period, Herbert Spencer, who divided all he wanted to write about into the knowable and the unknowable. And it became quite a quip among his contemporaries to say how much Spencer seemed to know about the unknowable, if you cannot talk about it, and so forth. But I take it that in addition to saying this with regards to Locke's something I know not what, okay, any of those unknowables that we cannot speak of. And later on, Wittgenstein will tell us that of that which we cannot speak, we should keep silent, which is like telling some people to shut up. Well, that's Peirce then. Notice that this has the marks of, what should we say, another methodological revolution. You see, Descartes represents a methodological revolution in philosophy from scholastic method. Bacon, a methodological revolution to inductive method. Kant, a methodological revolution to transcendental method, trying to get at the subjective preconditions of the possibility of. And now another methodological revolution to experimental methods, scientific method, universalized. Well, as I say, Peirce was a realist. He believed there are universal laws of nature. There are objective, what he called reals, not R-E-E-L, but R-E-A-L. He wasn't just fishing, even though he was in the Coastal Survey. Objective realities that can be known. Now, it's this methodological naturalism, then, methodological naturalism, the methodology of the natural sciences universalized. It's this methodological naturalism which is picked up by the pragmatists proper. James and Dewey outstanding them, are the outstanding ones. James calls pragmatism a method of settling philosophical disputes, which sounds sort of like the fixation of beliefs. How to fix a belief, how to settle disputes. A method of settling philosophical disputes by anticipating the consequences of a belief and seeing if those consequences actually occur. The same pattern as with experimental verification of hypotheses. However, it's important to see that in James, it's not just a matter of simply fixing beliefs that way. You have to watch the concept of experience. This is what changes. And here you see the difference, not so much from Descartes, who was Peirce's antagonist,